And it's 4 o'clock, so let's jump in. I'm going to keep admitting people into the room as we go, and we'll jump in with this evening. So thanks for being here, middle-level leaders, school psychologists. I know we're some of the people on the group, social workers, teachers, whomever is in the room, working together to figure out how do we best support students and one another, and the teachers, everybody, as we move through these interesting times that we're in, and any time that we're in, really, because every time is interesting. There's always going to be a roadblock or a barrier. It's how do we react to it in the moment and through thoughtful, intentional planning and interactions to get us to goal. So my name is Steve Seward, working with MASSP. My contact information is there. Wendy is not going to be joining us this evening. She ended up taking a vacation day and taking some time for herself, which is a great thing we all need to do. So hopefully we'll figure this out together as we manage this. In the chat box, for those of you who are just coming in the room, there is a link to the Google Doc that we always go into. You know, within that Google Doc, there's the agenda, there's the panelists, all of those important things, even down to if your email is not in the listserv and you want other people to be able to reach out to you, feel free to place it in there. And then we'll be voting as well. You're also going to know in that notice in that Google Doc, there's a spot for sketches. If you want sketches for this, we're trying a new process as of this evening. So you'll be the first ones to try it out. Click on that sketches link and you can fill out sketches for this time together. If you're struggling to access any of those things, let me know, and we will make our way through those as we interact with one another this evening. So also within that Google Doc is what are topics of interest for next time. So scroll in that Google Doc, fill that out of topics for next time. You can do that tonight. You can do it tomorrow and upvote any of those by placing X's. The directions are right there, and we will determine by tomorrow morning, I'll look at it and determine what our next areas of focus are and start building the next panelist of folks. So we have 28 people in the room, and my guess is people will come and go as it works best for them. We have a lineup of some smart folks from around the state who we reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to share? And they jumped right on board. Some with a little arm twisting, but all with a smile, of course. So they are going to introduce themselves as we typically do. And then we'll go right back up to the top and start with presentations or sharing of ideas. The focus question tonight is what are some ways to connect with disconnected students and families? So it's an opportunity for the listeners to say, validate yourselves and what you're currently doing, perhaps make some adaptations or twists to what you're currently doing, and then just explore with each other. You also, as listeners in the room, can unmute yourselves and pose questions at any point in time. So this is not the Steve Show. How do we work together to make this happen? And if we want to start with Eric and Haley, you want to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and then we'll go right on down the list and jump in with some ideas.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. My name is Eric Curl. I am a fifth-year principal at Holly Middle School in northwestern Oakland County. Haley Street is on with us here. Haley, are you there?
I am.
All right. Haley Street, also in her fifth year at Holly Middle School as our assistant principal. And a lot of what we're focusing on is just trying to make sure that the people that most impact our students, our teachers, are supported, and that we are continuing to focus on our culture of really showing each other love, patience, kindness, and grace this year more than any.
Thank you.
My name is Brooklyn Geringer. I am the Student Services Advisor for both middle schools in Howell, Michigan. This is my second year in administration, and this year my role is also to be the point of contact for all of our middle school virtual students.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Cravata, principal at DeWitt Middle School, just north of Lansing. I've been here at the middle school as principal for about 10 years and just excited to learn and share today.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Brenda Baker. I am the assistant principal at Roseville Middle and Eastland Middle here in Roseville. This is my second year, and what a way to start.
Welcome to the fun.
Good afternoon. I'm Shauna Grew. I am the middle school principal at St. Charles Community Schools. I am also, it's my fifth year there, and I also this year became the high school principal. So a great year to have additional responsibilities added on your plate. It's been pretty exciting. So I'm happy to be here, and much like Eric, I think our theme since really March, so for about a whole calendar year, has been grace. So looking forward to learning from everyone here tonight.
Thank you so much. It sounds like challenges for everybody. It's always going to adapt. Things are always going to change. It's how do we act in regard to those change. I don't think Brian is here this evening. Is Brian here? Brian Balding? He may jump in. If he jumps in, we'll flow with him. If not, I'll see when he comes in. Otherwise, we'll just wrap him up at the end. So what I'm going to do here is escape out of this so that we can see each other's faces and I can take notes in our shared Google Doc. And Eric and Haley, you are now in charge. Go ahead.
All right, I will attempt to show my screen here. So let me get to present. All right, is it in present mode for everyone? Okay.
Got it.
So Haley and I have just been talking about this topic in a variety of ways for quite some period of time, and we've had some stops and starts, and we're going to kind of share the things that we feel have been most impactful and successful, and are really excited to listen to everyone else so we can get more ideas to really improve on what we're doing. So Haley's going to start off talking about really our communication and how through communication we've established social emotional pieces being an important part of what we need to provide our disconnected families, more so than even just like the social emotional learning and tapping into how we're feeling with our in-person students and our virtual students. So Haley, I'll let you kind of start off, and I will ideally navigate the slides here.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that we realized early on during the pandemic, which I'm sure most of us did, is that we needed to be able to communicate often, and also use a variety of tools. And one of the greatest ways that we've been able to connect with our families is through Google Voice, and actually specifically texting. We're realizing that our families are much more willing to engage us in a text conversation than either through phone or email. And so myself, Eric, along with our staff, teachers, counselors, and other support individuals have been using this tool to reach out to families that we haven't been able to necessarily connect to in some of the more traditional ways. We've also taken the opportunity to use snail mail to our advantage. We've sent postcards to students. We've offered weekly office hours, along with increased our written communication through newsletters. A lot of our teacher teams are emailing parents, sending team emails, and really trying to bridge that gap between parents, students, and Holly Middle School. One of the things that was also unexpected that we've come to find through this experience is that students are much more willing to engage in our Schoology messaging feature, which kind of works similar to other messaging features that they use in social media. And so that has been a great tool for our staff to connect and reach students that otherwise might not check email or might not be reached via phone. We've upped our social media game as well. And when all of those things are not working, we do utilize our school police liaison officer to do wellness checks. And in some instances, that's all families need to kind of get back on track. But we've also found that through those experiences of checking in a face-to-face, that students have moved on from our district. Students might have been experiencing challenges that we were not aware of. Maybe that's lack of technology, lack of communication tools like a cell phone. And so those have been really nice when we've exhausted all of those other options. Go ahead and head to the next one. All right, so the other piece that I'm really proud of is the support network that our counselors have provided to our students. And what we've also found through this is that we needed a more intentional focus on SEL as a way to support many of our students. We've leaned heavily on our counselors to provide this, but really it has been a group effort. And we have found that in doing this, we have been able to reach some students that we otherwise weren't connecting with. Our counselors have taken the time to reach out to families
specifically over attendance, students that we haven't seen in 3, 4, 5 days. They've also been able to engage our family in those mental wellness needs that students might have that we might not be aware of. Our counselors have created virtual groups. A couple that they're running right now is an anxiety group and also a grief group. Those are oftentimes reasons why kids aren't connecting. And so kind of bringing them into the fold has been really helpful. Our counselors do host one-on-one Google Meets. And one of the things that we've started doing most recently is moving students that were virtual to back in person when possible. And we're finding that just that shift back into the school environment is what those students needed to gain the support that they needed. Our counseling staff also use surveys to connect with students and also to get a gauge on what their needs might be and where some of their struggles are, whether that's within the concept of school or at home. And so they've been able to target needs specifically that way. And now that we're back in session, we've been back in session for the last 3 weeks, our counseling staff have started check in, check out processes with students to kind of, again, bring those students back into the fold that might have been kind of MIA during our virtual learning experience. So Eric, I'll pass it on to you for our top 25.
Yeah, thank you, Haley. So one of the things that we did with our staff as we were, and this was really, as we were looking at first trimester data, we were looking at failing grades, we were looking at attendance, and really even students that were there, we were looking at engagement just from an anecdotal point of view from teachers. So through this, we established what we called a top 25. And each team identified 5 students, or I'm sorry, each team identified 25 students. And there's 5 teachers on a team, which is how we get to our top 25. And we were going to have these teachers mentor one group of 5 students. And our teachers thought that it'd be a great opportunity. We'd seen it just in some teachers who were doing this kind of on their own. And we thought it would be a really good system-wide approach to targeting our most at-need students. So in doing this, we have 2 teams at each grade level. We're a 6, 7, 8 building. So we were able to identify a little over 20% of what we figured were our most at risk or our least engaged students from an academic, behavioral, attendance, social emotional needs perspective. The way we've structured our school week is even with our in-person students, Wednesdays are a 100% virtual day. And this is where the bulk of the student support takes place at. On Wednesdays, our teams have built-in meeting time. There's meeting time for individual, these top 25 students, meeting time built in, and then there's built-in office hour time for all students. So on these support Wednesdays in the afternoon, each student has a standing meeting time with their teacher, and they meet for about 10 to 15 minutes. We've connected with the parents about the program, kind of explained why their student was identified. And then from there, the conversations, we just wanted them to be organic. It wasn't focused on just the social studies teacher talking to a kid about the missing social studies assignment. It was more just about establishing a connection, establishing a relationship, or strengthening a pre-existing relationship, because the teachers kind of talked amongst each other about, well, I'll take this student, I'll take that student. At the 6-week mark, we identified students that maybe weren't attending, and we reached back out to parents to see if they wanted the student as a top 25 member. We were able to graduate some students, and we were able to bring some more students on. So through this, these are just some, I'm not going to obviously read through, but each week when the teams meet, they provide some feedback on specific students, or just kind of a running discussion of what the teams talked about in regards to their top 25, talk about people they might move on and off, people that they're celebrating for certain things. It's nice for Haley and I because we can't be in every team meeting, so we can hop into these documents at the end of the day on Wednesdays and kind of check in and have side conversations with some of these students as well. part of the top 25 are the documented conversations that teachers are having with the students, with their 5 students. And, you know, as we were reading through these, it was really encouraging to see the type of conversations that were taking place. You know, students were talking about, like you can see there, their ADD diagnosis. They're talking about their cats. They're talking about getting ready to go snowboarding, talking about vacations. Yes, they're talking about academics, but we really feel that this connecting point can be the hook to get them into those academic conversations. And as we're going through, we started to really poll our teachers to see, all right, so of your top 25, how many are you meeting with regularly, and are we seeing improvements with these students? So after our first 6 weeks, we ran this survey. So there's good and bad, right? The good is the ones that we're connecting with are really seeing improvement. The bad is we're not connecting with a lot of them regularly because really it's still free will on them to join the standing meet time. And there's still that opportunity for parents to, some aren't even there to help support them on those days. But if you kind of look at the data, 6th grade has the highest percentage of students who would meet regularly with their mentor. And then it drops roughly about 10% per grade level. But what we found was really interesting that the percentage that are meeting regularly mirrors the percentage that are seeing improvements. And that really kind of buoyed us a little bit and led us to want to really hone in on those that are going to use it. That's where we were moving some kids off and keeping some kids on. And even some kids who could graduate were like, well, can we still check in? Our teachers like, yeah, absolutely. So we've had some teachers take on additional students. This last piece is something that is new to our district, and I just wanted to share it as a resource. We're really in the infancy with it. It's part of Graduation Alliance. It's called Engage MI or Engage Michigan. And our special services director brought it to the attention of principals. So we used a couple filtering layers. We used ease, on track for chronic absenteeism, and free and reduced as 3 at-risk categories. And we were able to identify 80 students that ticked the box in all 3 categories. And then what Engage Michigan does to the Graduation Alliance, it connects each student with an academic coach in order to help them along. It's another layer of support that was presented to us. It wasn't anything I had heard of before. Maybe you guys had it, who might have some more high school experience, but I just wanted to share this with the group. I can't really report out on it too much because we've just started and these coaches have just started reaching out to our families. But that's just what we wanted to share, and we're really looking forward to hearing from everyone else. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I was typing as you were talking, so trying to take notes. Thank you, though. And I had never heard of that, but the top 25, I like how you didn't call it the bottom 25 or the bottom 40. You actually called it the top 25. It's all about language and rephrasing. So that really stuck out to me, too. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. If there's any questions, feel free to put those in the chat box, and Eric and Haley can respond to them in the chat and or in another mechanism there. If we could, Brooklyn, would you mind going next?
Yep, I'm ready. Let me share my
Wonderful.
screen here. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Brooklyn Geringer. I am the Student Services Advisor in Howell. And this year, my role is supporting both our in-person students and our virtual students. So I truly feel like I'm working 3 jobs. I work in one middle school and I support, administratively, PBIS support, student discipline, things like that, MTSS meetings, professional development for teachers. And then I do the same thing at another middle school. And then I also work with all of our virtual middle school students. So in Howell, we have just over 1,500 students between both middle schools. Of that, about 300 are currently still in our fully virtual program. Howell is a little unique in that since August, we've had every student every day for our in-person students 5 days a week, but we've also offered our fully virtual option for families that chose that. At the middle school, that looks like 4 core classes with some optional electives Those are all taught by a team of teachers that share the same students. And then we take attendance at virtual meetings twice a week for that. So really what I wanted to talk about today is to share the work that we've done to engage our virtual students socially, because I have found that this is really one of the surprising ways that we've connected with some of our families that were not engaging. We had students attend a lot of these virtual social events for our virtual school that have not been attending class meetings or completing their work. And this was really our in with them. So that was just kind of like an unexpected side effect, but a great side effect of that. So how that kind of developed for us is I had a group of 8th grade girls reach out to me like in September and just share with me that they were really missing that connection back to school. I think there was a lot of, they see their friends on social media and they're posting things and they're back in school and we're making it happen, certainly with challenges, but we're making it happen. And they just were missing that social connection. So they asked if we would, or if I would be willing to meet with them so that we could brainstorm that. So that has evolved into our weekly meetings where we plan social events for our virtual students. That started in October. We did a virtual spirit week where the girls came up with, each week we're going to do these things. We're going to post them onto our social media platforms, and then just some pictures to share. We did, dressed orange on one of the days. We did a crazy hair day. We did dress to impress. So at your virtual meetings, you just came dressed fancy. We also had some other social events, which is really where we've had the most participation. We did a pet parade where students came and just kind of shared information about, what they have going on at home, and shared, as you can see on there, like multiple different pets they have there. So that was fun. In December, we did a Quizlet Live holiday edition challenge where we just played those games virtually and I facilitated it. And then we mailed some prizes out to students that placed within the top 3 for some of those games that we played. One of the other things that has been really successful is just having some principal hangouts and also hangouts with our school resource officer, where these kids can just kind of come and check in and hang out with us. I, at first, was skeptical when the girls came up with that idea. I wasn't sure how many kids would attend that. And at both of the meetings, we had about 20 out of the 300, which may not seem like a lot, but getting these kids to attend things outside of the school day has been a challenge. I think if you have that virtual option at your school, you've seen that as well. So those have been some really great ways. The last piece is really focusing on like, how can we still have a connection for our virtual students with in-person students? I really felt like this is what our leadership, my virtual team really was looking to add. So we've done like in-person Zooms with classes. We've connected them with our in-person leadership classes, and they've been brainstorming on things like charity fundraisers for the Humane Society. We do virtual clubs that both in-person and virtual students can attend. We've done a cooking class. Another thing that is new this semester is we added a virtual advisory class. We use the Positivity Project during we call it our advisory period. It's really just our first hour where there is no grade in that class, and it strictly focuses on SEL lessons. And in second semester, we were able to expand that to our virtual students where they can Zoom in the morning and actually be a part of that class and those discussions and some of the lessons from the Positivity Project. So that participation from our virtual students has slowly been increasing, and we certainly have students that attend that class but are still struggling to make it to their core classes. So that has been definitely a positive. What I wanted to brainstorm and maybe get some other ideas from other schools on what they're doing is, how do we connect with our virtual students that aren't engaging? Because this has certainly been a challenge for us this entire year. You brought up Engage Michigan. That's something that we are working with, and we only opened that up to our virtual students here in Howell. And between both middle schools, I identified about 90 of those 300 really qualify for that based on failing 2 or more of those core classes, and really like the attendance piece where they're not attending those virtual meetings, because we all know our most successful virtual students come to the meetings and are meeting with their teachers. So we do, all the typical things, staffings. These students are a part of our MTSS discussions, just like our in-person students are. With their team of teachers, we've done virtual counseling sessions, virtual groups. We have expanded opportunities for these students to come in person. Maybe students with an IEP, they come in for their resource class. They could always choose to come in for an elective if they were on board with that. We transitioned to block scheduling this year, so that has made it a little bit easier to allow that to happen, and also easier on the transportation piece. We've done virtual meetings to walk parents through our new LMS system, which is Schoology for this year. We've done in-person meetings with them. We use GoGuardian here in Howell, which has been helpful to help monitor our virtual students throughout the day. Different teachers, we have different times that we schedule where, hey, I'm just going to check in and see like, oh, now's the time for the ELA meeting. And I can see like the students watching YouTube. That's a really great tool to just kind of send them a quick message like, hey, don't forget your ELA meeting is going on right now. I definitely agree, like the ways that we communicate have changed. Texting has been new for us as well. Just keeping up with the parent phone calls, just constant communication. Even with all of these options utilized, I know like we still have students that we're struggling with, even after, our formal truancy process where these students are just not engaging. So really that's what I would love to brainstorm about, is how do we reach those kids where we've gone through all of this and we still have kids at this point who have not engaged in school really since the shutdown last year, and we're approaching a year. And those are, really our biggest concerns at this time. So that's all I have. I just wanted to share like the social aspect is how we've worked to connect some of those disengaged students. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any ideas on how you are engaging these students that aren't showing up, and how are you working alongside them and their families in like really different and unique ways? You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever works.
That's not an easy question.
It's not, is it? And it's different for so many, but look at the strategies that are already out there. Some of them are things we haven't tried before. We had somebody on the last time that said the students who weren't showing up, they actually showed up at their doorstep with food and treats, which re-engaged them. So I think everything runs the gamut. It's what do you have the resources to do as well? Keith, would you mind jumping on in?
Absolutely. I don't have any great answers to that question either, but I will jump in and share a few things. So I don't have any presentation. So unfortunately, you're just going to be looking at me, or hopefully maybe somebody else on the screen that you want to pay attention to during this time. Also, we'll mention that just a few hours ago, was fortunate enough to receive my second dose of vaccination. So if none of this makes any sense, let's just blame it on those side effects there. So, but feeling good so far. So just a little context for our middle school here in DeWitt, our district. We have gone through many transitions this year of models. We started fully remote. We transitioned to a 2-day-a-week hybrid model, and then we were able to get 1 week of a 4-day-a-week with nearly all of our students in the building at the end of October before we went fully remote again. And as of 3 weeks ago, we started a half-day model. So we have gone through a lot of change and transition. And so a lot of what we focused on this year is how do we support our staff through those changes and that change process each time. And as I have said, how do we manage through and try to survive the week before the first week of school, which I think we all know for administrators is maybe the busiest week of the year. And we've done that 4 times, and probably coming up on another 5th one here. We're going to try to March 8th. Seems like we're moving towards trying to get back to full days instruction here. So anyways, a little bit of context there. And I say that too, because I think that as we also have had about out of our 700 students, about 120 right now that are still fully online, have been online all year. That number has gone down throughout the years. We've been able to transition more students to in person, which I know some others mentioned has been a huge thing for helping to re-engage them. When we can get them back to in person, we've been trying to do that as much as possible. But also that, as we worked on how do we support students, especially that are disengaged, work with families, try things, we had to kind of think more. And I had to go back to a few years ago at one of the MASSP conferences. George Kuros spoke and talked about his innovators mindset, and talked specifically about innovating inside the box. And I felt like that's something we really had to remember this year and try to keep in mind, because we were really working through a lot of change process this year. And when we're doing that, it's not the time to try to throw all kinds of new ideas. We had to be creative and think about what is it that we have, some of our structures we have in place that we can use in these ways to actually engage students and families. And so one of the things we have in our middle school, as some others have mentioned, is we have teams. So we have teams of 2 teams of teachers at each grade level. And we really decided, how can we capitalize on that team structure to help us to be able to engage students? So like some others, we did work with those teams. We do have Wednesdays as an all virtual day. I think as Eric and Haley had said too. And so during those Wednesdays, we do have teams meeting together to be able to collaborate about students. And then we also have time where they're meeting with students. And like Eric and Haley's school, Holly there, and I think too in Howell, we also identified some students that were struggling, and we had them work with those teachers specifically on Wednesdays for support. And teachers kind of did what, they did at the top 25 there. They kind of drafted students based on our early warning system data, which is a process that I would say we've used and been supported by our ISD and using really well with our early warning systems data based around attendance, behavior, grades, and looking at some of the social emotional pieces, and to be able to help us identify students and then split them up between the team of teachers. And one of the things this year that I think has been a huge benefit to all of this is as we developed teams, we also made those teams became our cohorts too. So when we were in person to keep kids separated. And so we actually kind of, limited down elective choices this year. So an elective teacher only worked with one team or cohort at a time to help make sure that we could mitigate spread a little bit that way. And so those elective teachers became a real big part of that team. So my art teacher, they really just loved being able to be a part of a team and connect with students in that way and have other people that share those students. Whereas in the past, she's had students from multiple different teams in the building at one time and not really felt connected to that team structure. And so that's been huge in that we've been able to engage some of our teachers more into that process of what it's like to support a student through a team and how that can work. So, and like I said, we then use those Wednesdays for our teachers to be able to meet more individually with students, do some small group. We've always had a seminar time in our building. It used to be in the beginning of the day for about 20 minutes, half hour. When we were in person in October, we shifted it to the middle of the day. We've then moved it more to our Wednesdays when we have been virtual, and we'll see if we get back to full, we might put it back in the middle of the day. But that time, again, we've used that time to kind of hone in and, be able to work specifically in some areas, but it's also been used as more of an overall mentoring. And that's what those teams have really worked on and used it towards. And so we kind of relied on our student support process that we've always used. We turned it into something, because we're not doing a lot of in-person meetings and those kind of things. We turned it into more of a team process. So as they meet on Wednesdays, they use a spreadsheet. They go through and talk about kids. As Eric and Haley said, we can monitor that on documents and different things and look at that and be able to help support them. So we've used that process. I think too, like, Brooklyn had said in Howell, we also, we started to try to also focus on how do we engage students in some of the things they want, which is the fun. And it was, around October or so where some of our student leaders said, what can we do? How can we help out? How can we do some of this? So they started doing announcements twice a week. We always used to do announcements in the building and things, and we just couldn't do it when we weren't in here. And so we started doing that virtually. And so they actually get on with me on a Google Meet twice a week, and they have fun with it. They're kind of, they like to, make some jokes of the day and different things too. And we record those and we email them out. I email them out to all the students and staff after we record them. And so I now am getting emails from students if I don't get it in around the normal time that I do. So I know they're watching them. I know they're seeing them, but it's been a nice pick me up over the last couple months for our student leaders to be engaged in that way and to kind of help guide things. And they've organized some spirit days, and they even did a couple weeks ago, they did an all school Among Us tournament after school, which the kids were just pumped about. I mean, and so they loved that and organized some of those things. So, I think for us, it's been a lot of how do we think about how we innovate inside the box, because to try to get people to think way outside the box right now was not going to happen when we went through 5 different changes throughout the school year. That was what we were focused on. And that's what we had to manage through with all of our staff. A lot of decisions that were out of our control, and then how do we manage through the change process to get us to that next transition of bringing students in, or bringing students in a different model, or teaching in a different way. So that's a little bit from us, and appreciate hearing everybody that shared so far, and look forward to hearing some more ideas.
So thanks, Keith, for sharing your thoughts on that. It's been mentioned a few times around mentoring and teachers calling parents and reaching out and mentoring students, and probably mentoring parents as well. A question that I would have for anybody who's here this evening would be, what kind of training and support do teachers need to be able to do that? Because I've heard a lot of teachers struggle with that access point and feeling comfortable having that conversation. So what scaffolds were put in there to ensure teachers felt successful doing that? And then you had some type of consistency in the building. Anybody willing to unmute and share that for just a moment?
I could share a little bit. We have utilized our parapros this year to reach out to some of our virtual students who are struggling. We have one that goes around, as she's available, to our virtual teachers who are also in the building. And, she's able to check in with them after their class meeting has started, and they can just say like, hey, these kids aren't here. It's just a quick highlight, or she can use PowerSchool. And then she's calling home to say like, hey, so-and-so isn't on the meeting. And that has been really helpful. And to scaffold that, we've had some different scripts that we wrote for her to go through. And then also just some frequently asked questions that she's come across. We answer those for her. So that has been a really useful tool in getting some students to log in, because typically, we have parents who are saying, well, they say that they're doing their work. They say that they're attending the meeting, even though we know that they're not.
And I would just build off of that. I'm Mike Booking up here in Oscoda. I'm not sure how many of you have a program called School Success. I think that's a program that's pretty unique to Northeast Michigan, but essentially it's a program that comes into our building, and they work on overcoming barriers with families and communicating with families to work together. And we had someone in the building last year in that position, and unfortunately, with the way funding shook out, that went away, but we kept them on and are able to have a little more control over what she's able to do. And so a great example is we have a student who went from face-to-face to online instruction, and he's not been doing a whole lot of work. And so she just made contact with the family today, and is in the process of setting up a meeting for the parent to come in next week, because just like Brooklyn said, we're being told by the parent, hey, I'm sitting there, I'm watching him do it, and it's not getting turned in a Google Classroom, and there's just this disconnect between what's happening at home and what's actually being turned in at school. And so this is, a step for us to have someone who isn't necessarily a teacher to start that process, be a point person for teachers to say, hey, I'm not seeing work, or I'm concerned, and just making sure that kids like that aren't going to drop into the cracks, because we know, the administrative day is very busy, and having someone to coordinate these meetings and set them up has been really, really helpful.
Thanks for bringing that up, because it reminds me too of, if every teacher, the student has 5 or 6 teachers, and every teacher is contacting the parents, and administrators are, after a while, that I'm assuming the parents will shut down and shut off, just like students will, because they're being inundated. So those lines of communication seem like they would be imperative during these times. Eric, you had your microphone undone. Did you want to share something?
All I was going to say is we gave our teachers absolutely no formal training. It was just a response, but we have utilized, and we are a Leader in Me school. So we talk to teachers about utilizing just organizing their big rocks and putting first things first. Some teachers are comfortable with that. Others were more comfortable focusing just on academics. And then you have the others that really do wear their their ability to connect with kids on their sleeves, and they were able to enter into maybe some of those more personal relationships a little more quickly. But we don't have any formal training. So I'd be curious if anybody else does that. That'd be awesome to help really give more tools in the toolbox for our staff.
Or even if you have the scripts that you use and you're willing to throw those in our Google Doc. Again, I'll throw that Google Doc in our chat function, put them in there, because I think whatever we have will support other people. Some people do need a checklist. It works. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's jump over to Brenda. Are you ready?
I am ready. It's just me. I don't have a fancy PowerPoint, so we can hang out. So obviously, like all of us last March when we were shut down, we tasked everybody. We have a homeroom kind of system where we start the day in homeroom. So we were kind of in the same boat of, we have kids falling through the cracks, we don't know where they are, and since they can all move on to the next grade level, they don't have to do any of the work and they know there's no real problems. So we had a lot of students fall through the cracks. One of the things we did back in March was we had our homeroom teachers assigned to their homeroom class, and they had to contact those students every week on, hey, how are you doing? So that way they didn't have to call all 150 or 200 of their students. They were just responsible for those 25 students. We knew going into the fall that it wasn't going to be the same. We started all virtual in the fall. We came back face to face in October, but our teachers are teaching concurrently. So they have students at school and at home virtually. So our teachers are teaching both. So they're constantly on camera, kind of trying to figure everything out. And we didn't want to task them with, hey, you need to contact these 25 kids a week or 30 or how many ever. So what we did at both buildings is we took every administrator, every parapro, our restorative team, our attendance liaison, our police officer liaison, everyone who didn't have a class, and we divided every single kid up. So I'm at two buildings. I'm at one building in the morning and I'm at one building in the afternoon. So it was a little crazy, but we have all 600 kids at one building were contacted every single week, either through Google Text or through Schoology or through email or however they wanted to be contacted. So they were, talked to once a week. And if we couldn't get a hold of the student, then we called the parent to say, hey, what's going on? How are you? At the other building, we have about 300 students, and we did the same thing. Those students got a phone call every single week to check in. Usually in those conversations, we heard if they had moved and they weren't going to school here anymore, if they were living with grandma or grandpa now because mom and dad were doing other things, if they didn't have Wi-Fi anymore, we can provide them with hotspots to help them out. If their computer was broken and they didn't want to tell us. So in those little meetings, we were able to help kids get involved. With those kids that we didn't hear from, we made weekly house visits where our attendance liaison and our police officer liaison would find out which kids were missing more than half of their hours in a week, and they would go visit them at home. And it was a quick, how are you doing? We just want to make sure you're okay. A couple of students were, yeah, but do you have any food for us? Because we're really hungry. Great, let's go find some food for you. We'll bring it in back. Or it's, I forgot my username and password. Great, here it is. Let's get you on. For, part of communication, we also have Monday check-ins. So what one building does is every Monday without fail, every homeroom teacher sends out a Microsoft form. And it's just a couple of questions are, how are you feeling? How was your weekend? Do you have any anxiety? Are you feeling anything? What's going on at home? Once those students check in, then our SEL group divides it up and they call the kids. Hey, you said you were having a rough weekend. Let's talk about it. Or, hey, I saw last week you had a rough week and this week you're doing great. What was the change? What can we celebrate? So they do those check-ins. Another thing that we do for communication is we do daily announcements. All the principals do them, so we rotate and take turns. We do jokes. We do these things called Where in the World. So the teachers had to give us, if they could go anywhere they want, where would they go? And then we find clues, and every day we give a different clue to the kids, and they use Schoology and they have to guess where they think the teacher wants to go. And then at the end of the week, we announce winners. And if they're a virtual student, we mail candy home to them. And if they're face-to-face, we give them their candy at lunch. So just different activities like that. We have counselor groups that our counselor and our student assistant specialist run. So students are having a rough time. They meet with those students either weekly or daily, depending on the needs of the students. We have a full restorative team where, believe it or not, we have students who are virtual still having issues with other students. Sometimes it spills over into our Teams meeting that we have to take care of. So our restorative team has been having restorative circles virtually with students, or if the kids want to come in with their parents and settle it like that, we offer that as well. We do academic meetings, usually every week or every other week, where we have some students who are failing everything, who are face-to-face. And they've kind of bounced back and forth between virtual and face-to-face this year, obviously, like everyone else. So those students who are not doing so well, we tend to meet with them once or twice a week to keep them on track. We look at, what do you want to focus on this week? Social studies, great. Let's look at that. So they're not overwhelmed with, you are failing 5 of your classes with 75 missing assignments. Let's look at one class. What can we focus on? We have academic interventionists who also work with our students. They pull them out of classes and they work with them virtually to catch up on missing work, or if they miss something that day and they need help. We designate every day. Our school day runs from 7:45 to 2:05, and then from 2:05 to 2:55 is virtual time. So that's where the teachers focus just on the virtual kids. So if a virtual kid has trouble with a math assignment, they can call in at that time to their math teacher, and their math teacher will look through it and help them with it, or call in a small group. So the virtual kids are not being left behind. It's really cool that we have some teachers giving up their lunches and eating lunch with their virtual kids. They sit there on Teams and they just chat while they eat lunch, and it's just a free-for-all, kind of just chat about the week or chat about the day. The kids love it. They see teachers in a different light. They're not just standing up there lecturing. So some teachers have been doing that. That's really cool. For attendance wise, we have an attendance liaison, and those kids who like to sleep in a little extra, they get a phone call home every morning if they miss homeroom. And we tell them it's time to wake up and get to class. All you got to do is flip open your computer. So we do that. Like I said earlier, we also do home visits every week. So with students who are missing half of their classes or more, they get a home visit every week. If they're not answering the door, which most of our kids are home alone because they're in middle school and parents have to work, or they have little siblings and they were told not to open up their door, there's a little letter, and it's written by myself and the other AP, and it's just a simple, we miss you. We want to make sure you're okay. If you need anything, give us a call. We also do weekly attendance meetings for those kids who are almost at that truancy level. We make a phone call, we get them on the phone with mom or dad, and I'm in charge of the grades. So I love Schoology in the sense that I can look and see when kids log in, when they log out, when they open an assignment, how long they've spent on it. So when the parents say they're in class, they're working, they're telling me they're turning their assignments, and I can pull up the report and say, no, they're not. They're right here. And then the parents, it's an eye-opening experience for the parents, and they really appreciate that. And I have a lot of emails from parents of, are they in class? Are they doing their work? Can you just look and tell me, because I can't, I'm at work. So I get to be a snitch for the kids. Fun-wise, one of the things that we do to get all kids involved are we do student congress and NJHS still in the middle schools, and they do virtual fun weeks where they come up with ideas and then everybody participates, whether they're in school or they're at home. It's not just, oh, you're in school, I get to wear pajamas. Well, you're at home, you get to wear pajamas too. Send in your pictures and then we can put them all together and see who participated. At the beginning of the year, I decided to do birthday postcards where I was going to hand write a birthday card to every single student. Let me tell you how hard that is. So I have over 1,000 students at both buildings together, and my brain didn't quite compute that. So every week here I sit hand writing a birthday card, and it's hard, but I will not give it up. A lot of times the kids email me, thanks for the birthday card. I can't believe you remembered, or that was really cool of you, even though I'm not at school anymore. So I continued up, and the kids who have summer birthdays asked me, are you going to do it for me? And I said, absolutely, I will. So the birthday kids are already at home. I'm kind of filling those out early. So they'll still get their weekly birthday card. We also do, if the principals pop in on a meeting, and I think like all schools, we have begged them, turn your cameras on so we can see you. We're tired of teaching the little circles with your letters in the middle. And those kids that actually do have their cameras on, we send them taco coupons, which who doesn't love food? So, and we send a little handwritten note of thanks for having your camera on. We really appreciate it. Here's some tacos. Have a great day. And once the kids started hearing about that, we started getting more and more cameras on. Teachers have taken to putting things behind them to see if kids would notice. So if you can see right here, there's a hand-drawn picture. It's kind of blurry of LeBron James. So one of the kids was like, "You have my picture up." I'm like, "Yes, I do. I told you I would." We get into arguments because there's Derek Jeter right there. So we get into arguments about who's the better baseball player, football player, anything to get them active. We do pizza with the principal every month. So the teachers nominate pizza with kids who are doing a great job. And those students who are virtual, we send the pizza coupon home, and then they can log in when we have our, lunch, and then they can eat it as well. We do students of the month. So teachers nominate students, and then what the principal does is we have yard signs that say a Roseville Middle student of the month kid lives here. He goes and delivers those to the house, puts them in the front yard. He gets pictures with the kids. We have a whole thing of candy and gum and just unhealthy food that we give the kids. And they love that because we haven't forgotten them. We have a virtual art gallery for our art kids. So once a month, the art teachers put together a PowerPoint for me and then of pictures, and then I put it on our Schoology page. So the kids' art is still accessible. They can show it off, and it's not just, they come in for supplies. They do a drive-by for supplies, and then they do the best that they can with what they have. And they're really talented. It's amazing. And one of the final things we do is at the bigger school, we have a program called Web where everybody belongs. And it's our 8th grade mentors, and the 8th graders who want to be a part of this group join. And there's a 2-day class that they have to take in the summertime. And they are tasked with working with 10 6th graders throughout the year. So they are in charge of talking to the 10 6th graders every single week. They check in with them. Hey, how's it going? I know you're virtual. I'm virtual too. What are you liking? What are you disliking? Let me tell you about this school. The kids who are face-to-face check in with their 6th graders as well. They help them to their classes. They help them go to lunch the first week. They show them where the layout of the building is. They show them where the buses pick them up and drop them off. They tell them about all the things that we do in our building. So it's not just an adult talking to the 6th graders and telling them how great it is. 8th graders who have spent their 3 years there are their mentors too. And they do silly activities with their 6th graders as well. So that has really helped the 6th graders out.
Thank you so much. I hope I got everything. If you notice, there might be spelling errors all over. Sorry about that. I am not a fast typer. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Shauna, you're on.
Okay, I'll try to cruise through some of this. It's just me too. I didn't make anything up, but I do a lot of the same things that some of the other schools do. Again, I'm in St. Charles Community Schools. It's a small rural district. We have about 860 kids this year, total K-12, and I am the middle school and high school principal. So trying to implement some things in both buildings. It's a little bit different because we're working out of different offices and so forth. So I'll try to just stick to middle school. But some of the things we've done the dress up days. Along with the dress up days that we've done, we've tried to make social media posts to recognize the kids. And then for each day of the dress up days, we do a trivia question. And then for each trivia question, the kids can submit. We ask the trivia question over the announcements, and then they fill out a Google form with their answer. And then there's an app that we use that just selects a random number app. And whoever's random number was selected that had the correct answer gets some sort of prize. So sometimes they're gift cards, sometimes they're really nice prizes and really nice gift cards. Sometimes it's a $5 gift card, or sometimes it's a Snickers bar. Like, it just really depends on what we have around the building at the time to be able to give away. But we try to do a lot of rewards for kids to really encourage kids to want to come to school. We do Friday trivia just randomly, whether it's a dress up week or not. We always do Friday trivia, and that's sponsored by our student council. And then there's prizes that come with the Friday trivia as well. We try to recognize our students and give prizes for recognition. And these are prizes that any of the kids can receive. So if they show growth on their NWEA scores, we give prizes out, and every kid might get a candy bar. They might get something. Historically, we've done big assemblies where they get big prizes as well for showing growth on NWEA. They can get prizes for their Study Island Learning Pass. So anyone that earns 10 blue ribbons a month gets their name into a drawing. And then we pull 10 names from, we pull 10 names total, or 9 names, I guess, 3 names from each grade. And from that, we give prizes and make recognition over the announcements. They get recognized on our board minutes. So we really try to make it even for people. Like, we don't want it to be just your all A, all B students that can get recognized and receive rewards. We have had, so we're 5 days a week. We did go to a block schedule, so that was different for us, but we are 5 days a week face-to-face. We've had a virtual school for 10 years in St. Charles now. So it's been really a structure a system that we've have had in place, and we've had a virtual administrator operating it. But it's only been a small percentage. I think it was about 3% of our student body was a virtual student. And then this year, I think we're at about 30% of our student body are virtual, and that's K-12. And so we've really had to have a mind shift, because traditionally it's been like, oh, they're virtual, like Heather will take care of those kids. We don't need to worry about them. And now these are our kids that have went kindergarten through middle school or kindergarten through high school with us. And at some point, we're hoping that they return face-to-face, and we want to make sure that they're academically capable and can just transition in with ease. And so we are meeting on a monthly basis. So myself, our counselor, the virtual administrator, and our virtual parapro is meeting on a monthly basis and really looking at what are these kids doing, looking at those kids that aren't doing anything at all, looking at kids that are struggling academically to figure out what their needs are. Do they need a tutor? We sent letters home to any kid that was failing classes or any kid that failed any class first semester, and invited them to come into school. That way they can get support face-to-face. So some of these families that wanted to return, but they, waited until the 5th week into second semester and it's too late to return now. This has really gone a long way with those families that just really need a little bit of extra support. By coming into the building, they can also, they set a goal every day. And if they achieve their goal, they can earn gift cards. So we're trying to really convince them to try to come into school to get some work done. The kids that are coming in face-to-face, a lot of them we've encouraged to come in 2 days a week, but a lot of them are coming in more, and they are getting work done. We provide food for them while they're there. Again, we keep hearing the food incentive, and I know it's silly, but it works. We've done little things just to kind of brighten kids' days. So around homecoming time, we were able to do some homecoming activities. We still did homecoming court and all of that. But at the middle school level, we did a TikTok dance competition, and they were outside, and the kids just loved it. It was really fun. So love the Among Us competition. It made me think of that TikTok one the kids really loved it. We have child study at the middle school. So we do this about every other month. This is our first year doing it. We planned on starting it last year in March, and then of course COVID hit. Our elementary's always done it. So really it's running records on kids. So some of these kids, we send out an email to teachers, and the teachers then respond back and say, here are the kids I'm struggling with, here's what's going on. And then we'll bring those teachers together, all the teachers for the student, whether it's 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and we discuss, here's what we're seeing, what can we do to support this kid? And then each month, if they're still on the list, if the teacher still submits their name as them needing help, it's like, okay, well, this isn't working. What else can we do? And so sometimes it's connecting them with an older student as a mentor. Sometimes it's connecting them with a teacher as a mentor or a parapro as a mentor. This year so it's a wide variety of things. It just kind of depends on what the individual kids' needs are. And that's really what we've been focusing on, our individual kids' needs, whether that's the weekly meeting with our virtual team, whether that's our monthly or bi-monthly child study visits. It's really looking at each individual kid that's struggling and figuring out what is it that they need. We found that some of our virtual kids are really struggling with math. Well, we have a long-term sub that we hired this year who is very strong in math. And on days where she is not subbing, she has a caseload of kids that she is working directly with, pulling those kids, checking in with those kids during elective hours to make sure that that they're getting what their needs are to try to close gaps. We have parapros that have done that in the past. This year, our system is a little bit different just with COVID and how we had to adjust our MTSS system, but it's been pretty successful with this parapro that's working on it right now because of her strength in math. We also have all of our parapros have a caseload of kids, much like a special ed teacher would. So they're doing those check-ins with those kids on a weekly basis. We gave them, here's your check-in list. So they have a list of kids, and they also have a form that they fill out each time they meet with that student, and then they can say what they've done, what the plan is when they meet next time. So those are a few things. We do a weekly DF list, so it's just automated and sends out to myself, the counselors, every week, and our social worker and our counselor and social worker are able to meet with those kids that are failing. Sometimes it's often the reoccurring kids that are on there, but it does provide for some really good conversation. It also allows us to say, we have been working with these kids. We've been meeting with these kids in trying to help them improve on their academics. We've done home visits. We've done truancy letters. We've done virtual counseling sessions. And we've even had, you have some of those kids that are just really hard to connect with. They won't answer your phone. They screen your calls. They know it's the school. And so, but there's always usually that one person that they'll answer that phone call from. And so we try, who is that one person? We had one situation where it was an elementary teacher. And so we reached out to that elementary teacher and said, hey, can you reach out to this family for us? And they did, and it was successful. So it was just really getting creative to try to get this kid to do some work. And reaching out to someone that they connected with, and it just happened to be an elementary teacher. So again, we've had the same success with text messaging over calling or emailing. I try to remind teachers, you can use that Google Voice number. That's what I always use from home, and it is beneficial. So I know we're a little after 5, so I'll stop there and pass it back on to Steve.
Thanks so much for sharing. Appreciate all the ideas. Knowing that some of you have to go, no worries. Brian, saw you're in the room. Do you want to share a few thoughts to close us out?
Sure, that's good. I don't have a lot of thoughts, so it'll take quick. It'll be a quick
Oh,
report.
come on. I know that's not true.
So my name is Brian Balding. I am a middle school principal at Cedar Springs, which is just north of Grand Rapids. And I think the one thing I would share out that I've had, there are two kind of settings, one in Cedar Springs, one in Thornapple Kellogg, where I used to work south of Grand Rapids, that really put us in a position of going into the culture of the parents of some of our at-risk students. And I found that to be really important. A lot of our at-risk kids, their families, by the time they get to us, have just gotten call after call from principal and teacher and stuff like that. And it's really important that you can get into their culture. So in Cedar Springs, we are fortunate enough to have Kent School Services Network, and the community school coordinator and a local pastor and myself will go to both trailer parks that we have in town in the summer on Tuesdays, bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, play softball with the kids, and ask them to bring their parents out. And we engage the parents. We'll give them flyers about upcoming information, but just kind of going and meeting them where they're at. At Thornapple Kellogg, we had a pretty significant EL population, and it was a real game changer when we hired a interpreter from Columbia who could culturally really speak with those families. In a year, she had, I was quite impressed, she had us at 100% parent-teacher conference participation for all EL families. And so I think kind of the bottom line I would say is remember, with those parents, we don't necessarily live in their culture, and it's important to find people that can kind of be that access point to their culture so that they will receive us and want to engage with us. And so that's what I'm always trying to do when I find parents, who are disengaged, is find out what does that parent do? Where do they live? Who might really be able to connect with them? And then the last thing I say is the virtual what you guys are talking about with going to virtual learning, we've been pretty fortunate that we only had one period where we've gone virtual from November till January. Other than that, we're 5 days a week. But when we did go virtual, we had all of our paras and interventionists in a success team, and the organization of it really helped. The first 2 weeks, they only contacted students who weren't getting on to try to find out what technological issues were going on. Was there a parent at home, somebody that could support them? And then after that, for the next 6 weeks, it was all who's not completing assignments. So then a lot of times they were getting on with students all hours of the day, helping them out to complete their assignments. And that was really helpful. And we did, Steve, have a training. It was put on by Steve Johnson, who I know you know, did a great job of that. And I will get the information about what that training was and put it into your Google Doc. Thanks. I tried to talk fast. It's past 5. So.
You did, but you added something at the end that I think is extremely important. Is sometimes we have to know their culture and infiltrate that, because their perceptions around school are not ours. And oftentimes we're dressed in clothes that are worth $150, and our stakeholders they don't understand that. So by accessing them, we figure out who they are and can grow culture that way. So thanks for rounding us out that way, Brian, and appreciate it. All the rest of you, there'll be a recording uploaded. You'll have access to that. Panelists, thank you. Participants, thank you. If there's anything you might need or appreciate, give a holler. Have a great night, and the sun's still out. Have a good one, Al.